Hi, everyone. My name's Erin Griffith, and I'm the Fedora Program Manager. I think I know most of you here, but I wanted to apologize for not being able to be here in person. But I hope this recording will get you all the information that you need. If you do have any questions, please reach out at any time, or you can find me on Slack. But I am here today to talk to you about Fedora 7. So what exactly is Fedora 7? Well, Fedora 7 is the first major version of the Fedora core software since the release of Fedora 6 back in 2021. Fedora 7 represents a more modern and certainly more secure version of the software, thanks to upgrades made to over 40 dependency libraries that Fedora relies upon. Some of the main ones being Jersey, we upgraded Maven and Spring and Java. So many of these libraries were actually massively out of date and even end of life in some cases, which was causing issues for institutions trying to pass security audits and things like that. So modern Fedora aims to resolve that. And, we did make a large leap in our Java version from 11 to 21. And so we're excited to bring you a much more secure version in the end. And we also increased our automated test coverage to over 80%, hopefully making maintenance and future upgrades smoother and more simplified. So like I mentioned, Fedora, like most applications, is built on a very large number of dependency libraries, and there hasn't really been a focus within the community to keep all of those libraries current and up to date. We were starting to run into some issues with compatibility, upgrading, specific elements of the stack because they were reliant on versions of other things that were end of life and so on and so on. So we decided it was time to just kind of take a step back and tackle this. Originally, we proposed this work to be completed by an external contractor. So we were going to hire somebody from outside to support our work. But in advance of that, we needed to do some work of our own. So last year in April, we launched the Dependency Upgrade Project, which was that pre-work portion that we needed to do before we started to draft the RFP. We'd originally scoped this work in total to take, anywhere from 18 to 24 months, given the contributor team that we had and the time that it would take to go through all the phases. So writing an RFP, issuing it, hiring a contractor, et cetera. So what we did is we broke this down into a two-phased approach. And so the first phase of the project was to increase that test coverage, like I mentioned, to over 80%, which we didn't have previously. Through phase one, we resolved 21 GitHub issues were completed, and that was just for upgrading and writing new unit and integration tests to push us over that 80% mark, which was our goal. I'm happy to report that this phase of the project only took us 6 months to complete, and now we have that baseline 80% test coverage to work from. So the second phase of the project was to actually start looking at the dependency libraries that were involved. So we needed to list what we had, what versions we were on, and what our goal version was for each of those libraries. And so we knew that one of the main tasks here was going to be doing the Java 11 upgrade to Java 21. This also involved doing the namespace change from Java to Jakarta. And this was a deeply embedded element that we knew would be, could potentially be very challenging. So one of our committers started to poke around at this and actually had started a master ticket of his own, trying to focus on making these upgrades. And he realized that it was tied to many other things, and then it might not be simple to hand off to an external contractor. So we started to poke away at the work on our own. And we were able to accomplish all of the upgrades independently. So we, from there, after all of the dependency libraries were updated, we actually began work toward an official release of Fedora, what would be Fedora 7. So we promised the community an alpha release before Christmas, and we were able to deliver on that promise. And then just last month, in April 2026, we officially delivered a production-ready release of Fedora 7.0.0 to the community. So incredible work. It took us only 1 year with only community contributions and community development to do a project that we had scoped to take at minimum 18 months with the support of an external contractor. So this was a really huge lift and a really massive achievement for our committer team. And I do just want to take a moment here to recognize and thank all of those individuals who are involved. They are the true heroes of the project. So our active and engaged committer team is Ben Pennell from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Dan Field, our Fedora program developer, Damian Katz from Villanova, Jared Wicklow from the University of Manitoba, and Thomas Bernhardt from DocuTeam. So this group of individuals was solely responsible for completing all of this work and getting it over the line and really doing the bulk of the heavy lifting. So a big shout out to those individuals. And I also want to take a moment to acknowledge some other individuals who contributed to this effort in different ways. So Alex Weed submitted PRs for the first time during this project phase, as did Basil Marty from DocuTeam. And then James Alexander from the Open University is a weekly tech meeting regular who has done his own institutional testing on modern Fedora and has provided constant feedback through the entire process. So a big thank you to them as well. And then again, to everyone else who provided any type of support and feedback through Slack, GitHub, issues on Jira, etc. Anyone who contributed anything throughout this process, we appreciate and value each of these contributions. So along with actually releasing the software itself, there were some other things that we needed to do. So we did a full review of all current Fedora documentation. It had all been written back in 2021 to go along with Fedora 6, and it had only been, piecemeal updated as point releases were sent out. So it needed a complete overhaul. And I'm talking here, we went URL by URL, section by section through all of the documentation that exists on the wiki. We edited it and reviewed it for make sure links were working, macros were active, all of the content was accurate, etc. So we also focused here on trying to make legacy changes to the documentation and eliminate version numbers where possible. Trying to make maintenance and upkeep of this documentation easier for the future. And then the other thing that we wanted to do was revisit our community testing procedures, which had not been touched, reviewed, or modified since my time with Fedora. So the goal here was to simplify how to test, more clearly define what we wanted people to look at through testing, and then clarify how and where to provide feedback. So I also wanted to streamline where the feedback was being gathered. So previously it was spread across Jira issues, Google spreadsheets, wiki comments, GitHub issues, etc. So the goal here was to bring it all together into one place that's easier to maintain and a lower barrier for participation in the future. So this was a piece of work that I tackled with the support of some AI assist through ChatGPT and Claude, and reviewing all the old processes and documentation, and then defining and writing a new set of procedures. So the committers here supported by reviewing several iterations of the testing procedures. And, we came to what we have today, and all of that feedback now lives on GitHub in a tag discussion per release with a clear and defined process for creating new spaces and pages on the wiki for subsequent releases. So overall, we piloted it this round with 7, and all of our feedback was good, but I'd love to hear from you if you have different thoughts. And then some of the best news about Fedora 7. So no migrations are required. Yes, that's right. A major version without a migration. This is largely in part thanks to OCFL and not needing to restructure data of any kind to move to more updated versions. So this does apply to version 6 and newer. So if you have Fedora 6 already, all you need to do is pull down the latest version, deploy it, and then stand your repository back up, and you will be on modern, secure Fedora 7.0.0. However, if you aren't running a version of Fedora 6 yet, a migration is required. However, all of the previously developed tooling and documentation that was released when Fedora 6 was released is still going to work to get you to Fedora 7, because the outputs of all of those things, like the migration utils, etc., the output of that is an OCFL compliant Fedora, which means that you can move straight to 7 without having to pass through 6. You can go to 6 if you'd like, but we just recommend that you go straight to 7. But this is another really strong proof of concept and a +1 for OCFL doing what it's supposed to do. And I do just want to take a quick moment here to mention that Fedora 7 is now the LTS version of Fedora. And the reason for this is that Fedora 6 and older just contain so many out-of-date dependencies and the libraries that we cannot guarantee fixes for any issues that might come up. So some of those libraries are so out of date that they're end of life, and we cannot continue to support those libraries anymore. So what we can do is monitor, and if issues do arise that we can resolve for past versions, we will. We just can't commit to resolving them all the time. So if community members release their own patches for older versions, we would strongly encourage contributing those back to the community in support of others. But as always, we are the front line for security monitoring, and we will do what we can when we are able. But getting to modern Fedora is definitely highly recommended. And then the last thing I just want to give a quick update here is on the Hyrax Fedora 6 working group. Work is continuing as planned and defined in our deliverables. We are still working on getting things set up for phase 2 of our performance testing, which is where we want to investigate performance for works with many children, like 100 or more, using F6. So bulk racks is now installed on f6.new racks and it's working. And we're going to focus on adding all of the testing works to a collection so that then we can start moving through, we can start to dig in on our testing requirements. That's when we're going to be reaching out to you, the community, and asking for help. And, we may need some support in coordinating the testing tasks so that we can better manage the space that they're going to take up on S3 for storage. But you can expect to hear from us this summer on how you can get involved in that. So there is a link there to our working group page on the wiki, and I would encourage you to go there and check out all of our recent updates. And that is all for me. So here is a list of resources. Again, my slides are linked in the wiki for Samvera Virtual Connect. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I look forward to hearing from you.